The gas station was supposed to close in 5 minutes. A young mother stood alone behind the counter, counting down the end of another exhausting night shift. Her purse was still inside. Her car was still parked outside. But when the next customer walked in, she was gone. No scream, no witnesses, just a few drops of blood on the pavement, and the terrifying realization that somebody had been watching her for a long time. Somebody who knew her exact schedule.
Miss Vegan 911, where's your emergency?
I just got to work. I'm at the Exxon gas station on Sternberg Road. There's nobody here. It just is very suspicious.
The young mother vanished from the ExxonMobil gas station on Sternberg Road in Norton Shores. She was working the night shift alone.
On April 26, 2013, 25-year-old Jessica Heeringa arrived for her evening shift at an Exxon gas station in Norton Shores, Michigan. To everyone else, it looked like a completely normal Friday night, but for the people closest to Jessica, something about those late shifts always felt wrong. She was a young single mother raising a 3-year-old son, trying to hold her life together financially while working alone deep into the night. The station sat in a quiet area, and after dark the place became isolated. Empty roads, long stretches of silence, no security guard, no coworker beside her, and unbelievably, no surveillance cameras watching the building. Jessica didn't work those shifts because she wanted to. She worked them because she needed to. Her family was struggling financially, and she was doing everything she could to provide for her son. Friends later said she dreamed of going back to school and becoming an accountant someday. She wanted a different future, a safer future, but until then, she stood behind that counter night after night, completely alone. Earlier that evening, Jessica's boyfriend stopped by the station to check on her. It wasn't unusual. The people who loved her hated the fact that she was working by herself so late. One of her close friends also visited that night. They both worried about her safety, but Jessica brushed it off the way she always did. She had bills to pay. Life didn't stop just because something felt unsafe. But what nobody realized was that someone else had also been paying attention to Jessica. Someone who had likely studied her routine for weeks. Around 11 p.m., a customer pulled into the Exxon station expecting a routine stop. But the second he stepped out of his vehicle, something felt off. The station looked open, but it felt abandoned. The lights were still on. Jessica's car was parked outside. Another vehicle sat nearby, yet there was nobody behind the counter. He walked inside and called out. Nothing. At first, he assumed the clerk had stepped outside for a quick smoke break or gone into the back room, but as seconds turned into minutes, a sick feeling started creeping into his stomach. He circled the building, looking around the side entrances and the back area, but there was still no sign of Jessica. Then he called 911.
I just walked inside. There's nobody. There's a car here. There's another car out front, but it just is very suspicious why there's nobody here.
Okay, so did you yell or anything, or?
Yeah, I hollered, hey, walked around the building. It's just, I don't know.
Police arrived shortly afterward, and within minutes, the scene stopped looking like a missing employee case and started looking like something much darker. Jessica's jacket had been left behind. Her purse was still there with nearly $400 inside. Her cigarette sat untouched on the counter. Nothing had been stolen. The cash register wasn't emptied. There were no signs of a robbery. It looked as if Jessica had simply vanished in the middle of whatever she was doing. Investigators checked the store's transaction history and found the final sale had happened at exactly 10:55 p.m. Someone had purchased a cigarette lighter. Just 5 minutes later, the 911 call came in reporting the abandoned station. Somewhere in those 5 minutes, Jessica disappeared. Then officers noticed something chilling outside. On the pavement near the rear area of the building were faint drops of blood. Nearby, they found a small plastic piece later identified as a battery cover from a laser sight attached to a firearm. Suddenly, investigators realized they weren't dealing with a robbery gone wrong. This looked planned. And then came another disturbing detail. The back door near the blood could only be opened from the inside. There was no exterior handle. Whoever took Jessica likely forced her out through that rear exit. Police quickly confirmed the blood belonged to Jessica Heeringa. Now the terrifying reality settled over the town. A young mother had been abducted from her workplace in the middle of the night, and there were almost no witnesses, no cameras, no clear suspect, just silence. Investigators started canvassing the area, desperately searching for anyone who might have seen something unusual that night. At first, nobody came forward with anything useful, but then one witness remembered something that changed the entire direction of the case. The station manager told police she had been riding past the Exxon station on her motorcycle around the time Jessica disappeared. As she passed the backside of the building, something caught her attention. A silver minivan was parked near the rear area. At first, she didn't think much of it. She actually assumed Jessica might have been sneaking merchandise out the back, but the longer she looked, the stranger it seemed. She watched a man standing behind the van with the rear hatch open. He shut it quickly, then opened it again, then closed it once more, almost like he was adjusting something inside, or someone. The manager never heard screaming. She never saw Jessica, but she remembered the driver clearly enough to describe him. A white male wearing a reddish-orange sweatshirt with messy hair. She watched the silver van pull away into the darkness. At the time, she didn't report it because she didn't realize a crime had occurred. Now, investigators finally had their first real lead. They searched nearby surveillance footage from surrounding businesses, hoping another camera might have captured the van. Eventually, one grainy camera image revealed exactly what detectives feared: a silver Chrysler Town and Country minivan moving through the area around the time Jessica vanished. But there was a problem. Michigan had more than 15,000 registered Chrysler Town and Country vans. Thousands of them were silver. The lead that initially felt promising suddenly became overwhelming. Still, detectives refused to stop. They continued interviewing people connected to the station, revisiting customers, neighbors, and regular visitors. And during those interviews, another witness came forward with something deeply unsettling. A woman told investigators she had visited the station the night before Jessica disappeared. While talking casually with Jessica, she mentioned how dangerous it seemed for her to work alone so late at night. Jessica agreed immediately. She admitted she hated being there alone. But then a man nearby interrupted the conversation. He calmly told the woman not to worry because Jessica wasn't really alone. According to him, her customers would protect her. The words themselves weren't threatening, but the way he said them sent a chill through both women. The atmosphere changed instantly. Jessica reportedly became uncomfortable and stopped talking. Unlike the station manager, this witness got a good look at the man's face. Investigators used her description to create a composite sketch that spread rapidly across the region. For a while, it seemed like the case was finally moving. Then everything went cold. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Jessica's face spread across missing person posters, television broadcasts, and social media campaigns. Volunteers searched wooded areas and empty fields. Thousands of tips flooded in, but none of them led to Jessica. By the end of the year, the investigation slowed almost to a standstill. Jessica Heeringa had become another haunting, unsolved disappearance. But less than 20 minutes away from Norton Shores, another nightmare was quietly waiting to unfold. In June of 2014, a woman named Rebecca Bletch was found lying motionless in the middle of a road in Dalton Township, Michigan. At first glance, people thought she had been struck by a vehicle. Her body was twisted awkwardly, and she was barely alive when neighbors discovered her. But when investigators examined the scene, they realized this was no accident. Rebecca had been shot 3 times in the back of the head. Bruises covered her wrists, hands, legs, and back. Nearby, police recovered 3.22 caliber shell casings. The attack looked brutal and personal. Investigators initially believed it might have been random violence, but many detectives couldn't ignore the similarities between the 2 cases. 2 women, 2 attacks in quiet Michigan communities. One vanished completely, the other executed and left on the road. And once again, there were no witnesses, no cameras, no suspect. Years passed without answers. Then in April of 2016, everything changed because of one terrified 16-year-old girl. Late one night, the teenager was walking home after getting lost near a party. She didn't recognize the streets around her, and she had no phone. That's when a silver minivan slowly pulled up beside her. The driver leaned over and offered help. At first, she refused a ride, but she did ask if she could use his phone to contact someone she trusted. The man agreed, appearing calm and harmless. The moment she climbed inside the van, the situation exploded into terror. The driver accelerated suddenly and pulled a gun on her. The teenager panicked instantly. She fought desperately while the van sped through the darkness. Then, in a split-second decision that probably saved her life, she threw herself out of the moving vehicle. Bruised and terrified, she ran to the nearest house and pounded on the door until someone let her inside. Police responded immediately. And this time, investigators finally caught a break. Surveillance footage from nearby homes captured the vehicle involved in the attempted kidnapping. Detectives stared at the footage in disbelief. It was a silver Chrysler Town & Country, the same type of van seen near the Exxon station the night Jessica disappeared. This time, police narrowed the possible vehicles down to only 11 owners. Investigators showed the teenager photographs of those individuals, and without hesitation, she identified one man, Jeffrey Willis. The moment police searched his van, the investigation transformed from disturbing to horrifying. Inside, detectives found ropes, handcuffs, syringes filled with suspicious liquids, pills, restraints, and a ball gag. The items weren't random. Everything appeared organized and deliberate, like tools prepared in advance. Then investigators found the firearm, a .22 caliber handgun. Ballistics testing later confirmed it was the same weapon used to murder Rebecca Bletch. But the most chilling discovery came next. The gun's laser sight was missing its battery cover, the exact same type of battery cover found outside the Exxon station where Jessica vanished 3 years earlier. Suddenly, the pieces started snapping together. Investigators dug deeper into Jeffrey Willis's life and uncovered something deeply disturbing. On his computer, they found folders filled with violent material involving abduction fantasies and torture scenarios. But one folder stood out above all the others. It was labeled VICS. Inside were subfolders carrying initials: JLH, RSB, Jessica Lynn Heeringa, Rebecca Sue Bletch. The folders contained photos, news articles, and saved media coverage about both women, almost as if Jeffrey Willis had been collecting trophies tied to his crimes. Then detectives cracked the password to one of his devices. The password referenced Jessica's initials alongside the exact date she vanished. At that point, investigators believed they finally understood what happened. They concluded Jeffrey Willis had likely been stalking Jessica long before the abduction. Prosecutors later revealed he had visited the Exxon station more than 15 times before she disappeared. Detectives believed he learned her shifts, studied the isolated station, and waited for the perfect opportunity. On April 26, 2013, he allegedly chose his moment carefully. The station was nearly empty. Jessica was alone. No cameras existed to capture the attack, and within minutes, she vanished forever. Jeffrey Willis was arrested and charged with the murder of Rebecca Bletch, the kidnapping and murder of Jessica Heeringa, and the attempted kidnapping of the teenage girl who escaped his van. But even after the arrest, the story somehow became even darker. During questioning, Willis's cousin Kevin Bloom made a shocking statement to investigators. He claimed Jeffrey once invited him over under the pretense of a gathering. But when he arrived, he allegedly found Jessica unconscious, injured, and wrapped in a sheet. According to Kevin, Jeffrey later disposed of her remains somewhere nobody would ever find them. Kevin eventually changed his story and tried to backtrack, but investigators believed he knew far more than he admitted. He later pleaded no contest to helping Jeffrey dispose of Jessica's body. Yet despite all the investigations, searches, and confessions, Jessica's remains have never been recovered. In court, prosecutors painted Jeffrey Willis as a calculated predator who hunted vulnerable women. They argued he specifically targeted Jessica because she worked alone during late-night shifts. Evidence showed he skipped work the night she vanished, and phone records placed him near the gas station around the exact time of the abduction. The defense argued the case was circumstantial. There was no body, no direct eyewitness to the kidnapping, no confession from Jeffrey himself, but the jury didn't believe him. After only 90 minutes of deliberation, Jeffrey Willis was found guilty of kidnapping and murdering Jessica Heeringa. He received life in prison without parole, adding to the life sentence he was already serving for Rebecca Bletch's murder. Even then, Jessica's family said the victory felt incomplete because they still couldn't bring her home. No grave, no final goodbye, just unanswered questions lingering in the silence. Jessica Heeringa wasn't just another true crime headline. She was a mother fighting to build a better future for her son, a daughter who still called home, a young woman who worked exhausting night shifts so her family could survive another week. And somewhere out there, hidden beneath years of secrets, her remains are still waiting to be found. But the most terrifying part of this entire case may be the realization that Jessica was never randomly chosen. Investigators believe Jeffrey Willis studied her, watched her, learned her schedule. He knew exactly when she would be alone. He knew the station had no cameras. He knew nobody would hear her scream. And on that quiet April night, when the clock crept toward closing time, a predator pulled into the parking lot, already knowing exactly how the night would end.